Hi YouTube. I am doing a video response to BexarPrepper's 2-year giveaway. She has a wonderful channel that I have gleaned so much from, and she is doing a giveaway, and so this is my response to her request for video entries into the contest. And what she's asked is that we put together something that we have in our food storage that's completely food storage. So this is my bread. She made bread. I make bread. I love my bread, and I've been meaning to do a video for a little bit. It took me forever to get to where I knew how to make bread, and quite honestly, I was afraid of my dough, and so I always ended up with really bad bread at best and a rock at worst. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cup of water, and it is hot water, a little bit. It's you can just hot enough to be able to stick your finger in it and it not burn. And I'm going to use, oops, almost forgot my sugar. I'm going to use a 1/3 cup of sugar. Now, you don't have to use sugar. I use sugar. You can use honey, you know, whatever it is that you want it to use. I know that this is what works really well in mine. I usually don't use quite a 1/3 cup to the 1 cup of water. So we just give that a quick stir around so that can go ahead and start dissolving. Alright, that's going to feed the yeast, and to that we're going to use 2 rounded, slightly rounded teaspoons of yeast. Okay, and what we're going to do is I'm going to let that sit there for about 5 minutes until it blooms. And if you don't know what blooming is, the yeast will, which I'm sure most of everyone that's watching this probably does, but it's where the yeast will start to actually, it looks like it's a flower blooming. It just, and then it'll make a nice pretty foam on top, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I'll be right back and show you that. Actually, I think what I'll do is talk to you about bread stations. I know one of the things that was really hard, I'm going to slide this back, was really hard for me when I used to make bread was that I was going from one side of my kitchen to the other side to get the salt or get the oil or get the flour, or I have other recipes that I also make. Make a yeast roll. I also have dehydrated potatoes or potato flakes that I use in one of my recipes. So what I did is I actually have, this is my station that I use for making bread, and I keep all of my things here with the exception of my yeast, which I store in the refrigerator, and I'm putting away now before I forget. Sorry, I just wanted to get that put away. And then, you know, I have my oil and my salt. I use no iodine salt. You can get Walmart brand of this. I don't put, I don't know. I just, not that I have anything against iodine, but I just feel like if I don't need to add it, why do it? I mean, I used iodine sometimes in my regular cooking, but in my bread I don't. So, and you can see, I'll show you, it is starting to come up. It's kind of making a foam there on top, and you can see the bubbles that are coming up right here. I apologize, my lighting isn't very good over here, but I think you can see what it looks like. You can see here the rim of the water. This was all water, and then the yeast is blooming and feeding off of that sugar. And it smells so wonderful. I absolutely love the smell of yeast. Alright, so I'm going to set this back over here. Let me get you set up. I apologize for all the movement. Okay, so my yeast is fairly well bloomed. And from this point, what I'm going to do is I'll just tell you, and that'll give me my yeast a few minutes to work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my oil, and I let my oil create a little puddle, because oil rises to the top, so I let the oil make a little puddle, and I put my salt into the little puddle of oil, and then I add my flour. And that way I'm not putting my salt directly on my yeast, because I've heard that salt kills yeast. A lot of people put it right in and they have great success, but I didn't want to take a chance, so that's what I went ahead and did, and it's always worked for me. And you can see that it's bloomed more. It's completely filled in here around the edges, so it's looking good. And I'm going to go ahead and take that as my sign that I am good to go. So I'm going to set this back up here. Alright, so I'm going to take and put my oil in, and just put that right in. And then I'm going to take my salt, and by the way, that was 1/8 of a cup of oil. So not a lot of oil, just a decent amount. And then on my salt, I'm going to add about 3/4, I keep grabbing the wrong one, of a teaspoon. So instead of doing like a quarter and a what have you, I just kind of make it to where it's just got a slight indentation and throw that in. Alright, and then I have 3 cups of flour, and again, this is my from my wheat berries, and I grind it on the finest setting because I like mine to be really fine. It makes for a nice light loaf of bread. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this in, kind of slowly so that it incorporates, that makes it lighter. And so I'm just going to turn this on, stir, and add a cup, or, just start adding it in. Now I have on, and I know you noticed, the beater attachment. And this is a 1/3 cup measure, so I'm just putting 3 of those in there. And so that's a cup of flour that's in there. I'm only making 1 loaf of bread because I like to have really fresh bread, and it usually takes us about 2 days to eat a loaf. Let me grab a spatula. Okay. And then what I do is I let that mix for a minute, or for just that little bit of time, just so that it incorporates. Scrape it down, and then I turn it up on about 1. Now I let this go for, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute, and I do that because it gets a good mix on the dough, and it lets it go ahead and start incorporating everything together, and it kind of gets fluffy and frothy in there. I'll show you. if you can see. See, it almost looks like a batter. Okay, I'll show you. See that? Okay, so I'm going to lock that back down and go ahead and start adding in more of the flour. And put that back on. Alright, I'm going to add just that little bit, mix it in, and then I'm going to switch over to my dough hook. You know, and there's no set amount. I always add at least a cup of flour and use my beater. And then once I'm done with that, let me slip this in the sink. Once I'm done there, I go ahead and scrape down and start adding in my the rest of my flour with the dough hook on. And make sure you have your KitchenAid locked down. And I have 3 cups of flour here. You probably aren't going to need all 3 of it. I would say I normally use about 2 3/4, and you know, I'm in Florida. It's very humid here. You might could use 2 1/2, and you know, you can also add bread flour to this, just substituting, you know, a cup of your whole wheat for a cup of bread flour, and it makes an insane loaf of bread. It's just wonderful. This is a simple recipe. It is so easy to make, and the bread is so soft, and it's really a spongy, just like a store-bought bread, which is something I really was, you know, for a long time didn't think I would ever be able to make. And I'm really glad to have worked this recipe out, because I actually tried, I was using a different recipe for rolls, and it was a yeast roll, and but it had excellent instructions, and through that process of making them, I actually was able to figure out how to bake. And once you get the gist of it, then you can start really playing with recipes and things like that. So this is my recipe. I used so far about 2 1/2 cups. And what you're going to be looking for is for that dough to pull away from your bowl, and it'll actually clean the sides of the bowl. So you'll start to see that in a minute. That's about where I want it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my timer for 12 minutes. I know it seems like a long time, but it's whole wheat, and it really gives time for your, I'm setting it now. Alright, it really gives time for your gluten and the wheat to develop, and you want a spongy, or not spongy, but an elastic dough. And this is what I found works really well. So this is my recipe, and I'll come back once I have this beaten, and I'll show you, or kneaded, and I'll show you what I do from here. Okay, two things that I do. When I come back and I check my timer about, a couple minutes usually before, and at that point, when I see that I've got about 2 minutes left on my timer, I turn my oven on, and I use that as a way for my oven to warm slightly, and for my, for it to create like a little area that I can proof my dough in and let it rise. And so here is my dough, and as you can see, it's nice and sticky, and when it was going in with the mixer on, it completely pulled away from the bottom, not this part right here, but down in the bottom. It was completely clean as it was going around. So what I've got here is, I've got my dough, and I'm just going to take it and work it, and you can see it's got a beautiful consistency, and it's nice, and just real nice and elastic. It has a tiny bit of stickiness, but I think that's because it's not normally. I think that's probably because my hands were a little bit damp. They were dry, but still maybe a little damp. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, and I put some oil in here. Take that dough and go ahead and just pull that off. I don't know why it have a little bit there, but I'm going to take it off. And I'm not going to use it. Anyway, I'm going to pull that off though, so that my dough won't stick to it. Alright, so I've got the oil. I'm going to add just a shade more. Put a little oil in the bottom, and I'm going to go all the way around my bowl. I don't like having to get a bunch of bowls and everything out when I do bread. It just makes for more cleanup, and you don't really have to. If you get it oiled well, that dough will come right out, and you can still use the same bowl. So alright, so now I've got that. I'm going to take my dough I made here, and you notice I didn't knead it or anything like that. I just, turned the edges under so it'd make a nice little, nothing special, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and this is my nice top. I'm going to take it and I'm going to lay it in there flat, upside down, so that the oil gets on it, and then I'm going to flip it back over so that my top is here. And I'm going to, from there, I'm going to take some plastic wrap. I like using plastic wrap instead of a towel. And the reason being is it creates like a little climate in there. And because your heat from your dough and everything stays inside in the moisture, so it keeps it moist instead of like with a towel. The air will circulate, and it can dry out. So this is how I do mine, and what I do now is I take it and I put it in my oven, and like I said, I let the oven heat for maybe 2 minutes, just until my timer goes off, and then I make sure that I've got the oven turned off, and I leave the light in my oven on. And that little bit of light and that heat and everything in there helps the dough to rise and creates a nice little warm environment. So, oops, this seems to have a hole in it, so I'm just going to put another piece on it. Because I want it to be completely enclosed. And what happened? It had a little tear right there. Anyway, so now I've got this. I'm going to put it in my oven until it's doubled in size, and then I'll show you what it looks like and what we do from there.